So welcome back to this series of tips for photographing your baby and your children at home during lockdown. In this short video, I'm going to introduce you to the rule of thirds and explain how it can help you to take more interesting photographs. As always, these tips are for everybody. You do not need a fancy camera to use these tips. You can just use them with your phone. And if you'd like to read more photography tutorials, you can pop over to my website and find them at claremurthy.com/learn. When we're taking photographs of our baby or our children, most of us will have the natural instinct to pop our child right in the middle of the frame so that there's equal amounts of space on either side of them in the photograph. And that can make for some lovely photographs of our children. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But what you might have noticed is that if you place your baby or your child elsewhere in the frame, so not in the middle, you get a more interesting photograph. And that's where compositional rules like the rule of third come into play. Now, the rule of thirds is actually quite simple. If you imagine that your photograph is split into 9 parts with 2 lines running equally spaced vertically down the photograph and 2 lines running equally spaced horizontally across it, that creates 9 parts of your grid. Now, actually, most phones and lots of cameras show you those grid lines when you're taking the photograph, so you don't even need to imagine that they're there. And what the rule of thirds says is that when you're taking the photograph, if you place your baby or your child along one of those grid lines, you'll get a strong composition. And actually, the composition will be even stronger if the subject of your photo is at the point where 2 of those lines intersect. So what does this mean when you're taking photographs of people? Well, actually, when we look at a photograph of a person, what most of us want to see is their face. And it's only natural that we also are drawn to their eyes because that's what we look at when we're talking to people. So to use the rule of thirds when you're photographing people in your family, move your camera around so that the person's face and hopefully their eyes is at the point where 2 of those grid lines intersect or as close as you can get to it. Now, you don't just need to use the rule of thirds in portraits, you can use it in all types of photography. You can also use it in landscapes. So when we take a photograph of a landscape, often our instinct is to place the horizon line right in the middle of the frame, nice and symmetrical. But actually, what can be more interesting and more pleasing to the eye is if you place it along one of your grid lines. So next time when you're photographing a landscape, try and place the horizon along the bottom horizontal line on your photograph or the top horizontal line on your photograph and see what difference it makes. Now, one last thing, although it's called the rule of thirds, it is just a guideline. You don't have to follow it every time. And if you take a photograph that you think looks great, but it doesn't follow the rule of thirds, then don't give it a second thought. Just enjoy the photograph that you've taken. I really hope this short introduction to the rule of thirds helps you as you're taking some photographs of your family during lockdown to document this historic time. If you've got any questions, please do get in touch. You can leave me a message in the comments or you can send me a private message. I'll be back next week, but until then you can find more photography tips and tutorials over on my website at claremurthy.com/learn.